The English are going to have to go first. The French won the initiative again. Their resources just at 1.5 supplies, but they did get a decent unit back from their dead pile. We're all even now, which is to say, whatever's lost now just counts against. I haven't seen any fighting, so if that continues, nobody's going to draw. I suspect we'll see attacks along here. I can't see the Brits going there. Okay, so the English defined 2 attacks, one coming here, one coming here. So far their air and naval barrages have done nothing. Now, they were pretty low chances. I've got artillery as a backup, which I can't use back here, obviously, but I can use over here in the combat segment before the actual attack. Of course, because of how I'm doing the optional roll, the French are going to be able to fire their own artillery to try to break up these attacks. The interesting place is around here. The Allies put these units all in reserve. I don't know if that's good or bad. The French have a lot of units in reserve too, and may take this opportunity to move their foot units forward and prepare to try to launch an attack down here. I'm not sure I can get away with it, but there's sort of a supply conglomeration occurring down there, and obviously I don't necessarily know what's going on, but it looks weak. It's on the rail line. I've got my suspicions. Certainly there is some back here. Still not moving this thing. I can't quite figure out what to do with it. Oh, I found that I was cheating. I had slipped over the escarpment, which I can't do with some of my cav. I slipped back over, which is fine, but basically any chance of like slipping around this way wouldn't work. There's an escarpment along there, and that shit's nasty. That's prohibited terrain across the board unless the road cuts through it, which it does right here. No, it goes around it. So I'm not going to have an easy way around, but if I can cut off the French supply line, then that makes their life difficult to hold this position, and I figured it would be easier to attack here. Able to disorder these French, and facing this situation, I chose not to attack. I tried my artillery here, but it didn't work. I'm burning through supply, but the French did move forward, but they can't go very far in a reaction. Some of these units were pretty slow, but it does give us a little bit of room, and maybe we can do something ugly to this stack, or maybe we can threaten this. I'm not sure. These guys are probably out of any range. Basically, anything that I do is going to require me, this can get to 12 hexes. I can get close enough if I immobilize that headquarters that I can threaten this. The problem is the Brits put all this in reserve, which kind of means if I don't attack that, I'm going to be facing some of it, and unless I can get an airstrike in on it or something, I can't really count on anything. Because of the order of the airstrikes, the barrage segment comes after all my movement. Whatever risk I have in terms of getting that airstrike off successfully determines whether or not I'm just screwed. And that may be a little too much of a chance to take. I do have some decent air power at this point, though. So, maybe? Because what else am I going to use it for? I could have bombed this as well. Basically, these are free strikes. I've got that filled up. Oh, I did a fighter sweep. It didn't kill anything, but it did knock them out. A little bit more from the corrections department. When I did the combat, I didn't apply the rounding rule. Now, the reason for that is I don't always read terribly conclusively. And when I looked up combat to make sure how it works, I jumped in on this bolded stuff here. Yeah, you make anything a little different to me, and boom, that becomes the only focus or a major focus for me. The combat table is now devoted to each terrain kind of fund. Use the highest column that is less than or equal to the determined rounded table. Now, to me, first of all, I vaguely remembered, maybe I don't see them, so I'm obviously mistaken. I thought there were odds that were beyond the simple 1-to-1, 2-to-1. I thought there was a 3-to-2, and actually something between 2-to-1 and 3-to-1. I don't know what the hell I'm thinking of, but anyway, which would make this design really, really difficult. But beyond that, it does indeed say here to use the standing rounding rule on the odds. Wait. To determine the combat odds, use the total modified attacking strength and the total modified defending strength. Divide both by the smaller of them and apply the rounding rule to each result. Express the resulting as a ratio of attacker to defender. So you're applying the rounding rule to the results. Wow. Whereas here, now what they have here is a special call out. So in general, do not round until calculations round the final odds determined. Do not round combat strengths before determining odds, which seems to be the close to the opposite of what we have here, right? But actually, that doesn't matter because, yeah, no, that works. Because if I have, trying to think what, but if I have numbers that are going to divide, it's telling you how to create the odds, and I'll end up with the right odds number if I do that. Anyway, what it turns out from the game perspective is I had one fight where the odds would have rounded up from 2-to-1 to 3-to-1. It probably didn't make much difference. The combat table is very, very gradual. And of course, we're not going to try to figure out how to fix that at this point. Anyhow, even if it had been a serious effect, because, it would be impossible. But also from a philosophical standpoint, things happen in warfare. Screw it, man. You screw up, it happened. Little fighting going on. These are all filled out, which means there's no chance of additional replacements coming. We'd still draw from the full pile. The French don't get any equipment or replacement people to feed into units, so they're not going to get any of that the way the Commonwealth does. And they had no reinforcements slated for this turn. So there's not a whole hell of a lot for them to play with that's coming in new, just a little bit of supplies here. And now we have to figure out what to do and whether or not, this move made sense, whether I can in any way take advantage of that situation, or if I'm just going to kind of fall back to where I was and say, and now not be in reserve, which would kind of suck. Might make sense to make this whole big pile in reserve. The problem with that is the Brits have a bomber still. There's not a lot I can do about that because I don't have my forces under my air cover. If I had an air base further forward, I could be protecting against that bomber, but as it is, all I get is a little bit of flak. I don't get to throw a fighter in to try to shoot it down or anything. So, that's that. French have had to give some ground here to this river line. We'll see if this is a dangerous situation. I don't think it is, but I'm not sure because zones are pretty fluid here against everything but trucks. But we can't get there with infantry, so I figure it's pretty safe for now. These are Actually, I'm along the escarpment. Do I even need to bother? I don't even need to bother with these guys up here, so they can actually be part of this hex, because the escarpment's protecting me here. I keep not seeing those escarpments. Okay, and shifting some supplies downward. Over here I also withdrew a little bit. Basically the position I was in was not really a maintainable one, because I was up here with this hex open. There's no escarpment protecting here. The Commonwealth could slide in up to there, cut my supply route, and I'd start having real problems because of that. And then I'd have to try to figure out how to get them out. So I had to fall back. Over here I'm attempting an attack. Kind of weird, because why I'm insisting on turning these at this point. I failed to get my planes to successfully bombard the big stack of reserves. I did get a successful disorganize against these guys. I don't know if that does me a damn bit of good. What it does is it pretty much telegraphs to the Brits, hey, you'd better defend this with your reserve. So, and then I don't have to actually attack. But at this point, I was looking at the, hey, if I could knock this out and if I could disorder both of these, that takes the reserve off there. That gives me a good reason, a good ability to try to steal into their supply line region and probably start causing some problems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They'd still be in throw range of their headquarters, so I don't know how much good it really does. And then this low hills, that wouldn't work for any motorized units there, but foot units, well, no, the headquarters throw range is what's important. So yeah, that would be kind of a problem. I might, if there's anything motorized in there, I'd have trouble. And in fact, I think the top unit is indeed a fully motorized unit, which means, I'd have to figure out some way, but it's not French. I'd have to figure out some way of getting supply to any French motorized stuff that's in there. I don't think there is any, but whatever. And yeah, giving ground, but also trying to force the Brits into a position where they're giving ground themselves. I think that's it until the reaction, because everything looks like it's in good trace supply at this point. And obviously the French throw is enough. The Brits pull back with their infantry. They leave the motorized unit here. My feeling is I'm going to be able to take this stack out. It looks like it was a pretty stupid idea to move up there. Especially since it's not in reserve, but there are things in reserve back here, some of which might be able to support that, so we'll see. But as I continue my blundering through, I'm having a good time, at least. I'll have to say this much. After the pain of learning the game, just like with Burma, it's really bringing a great deal of pleasure. It's an easier system than Desert Fox for me to cope with in terms of the supply. I just have to move it around a lot. I don't have to try to come up with this magical network. And just more of an intuitive type of design. When you look at it, you say, yeah, that makes sense, Some of the stuff, some of the strategies in it that I read about, that maybe I've heard people talk about, yeah, they're probably beyond me. You're not going to learn a lot about how to play the system well from me. But you do get some view of what's going on here. There are a lot of clever tricks that you can do to just get a little bit of extra, a little bit of extra movement points or whatever out of the system. A little bit of extra combat capability. Commonwealth win the initiative, which puts them in an interesting position. They may want to go first to try to hammer that unit. It's kind of an interesting situation because the initiative is completely random. And you have to kind of decide, well, is this unit worth giving up the overall initiative by continuing to go first? Is there anything that I'd really want to do that would ask me to go second? I don't see anything that's really begging for that, so I'm going to go ahead with that. I have some of the kind of maintenance tasks, roll for new units and stuff like, and boats and stuff like that. I think they're still available here, June 17th. This is the last, no, next turn is the last turn when I have the stretch, and then later it goes to every other turn, which is more or less what the French have, but theirs starts running out, actually. So less naval operations, which, that's one of the, so I mean the level of naval operations may have had something to do with the ability to move, and I'm not sure that I feel like we've kind of settled into a position where the navies would be less required. But there are other operations taking place at the same time, and it could be that the boats are just, were devoted to that initial sequence a little bit more, and then with the Vichy destroyer squadron, the assumption may be that they're pretty much wiped out by that point. It's a good unit. I thought, gee, I'll be overrunning. Lots of strength points, decent unit. Ooh, I forgot to pay. Back here, I owe some supplies. But anyway, the thought was I'd have overwhelming numbers, good unit. Turned out to be 2-to-1, equal size units. I took a loss. The Vichy French just got to retreat. Not exactly the result I was hoping for out of that. Ouch. Real old school type of games, I could just move this thing up to here and oh look, I got zones all around it. Yeah, but the zones are so fluid in this, and these are all infantry anyway, they can just kind of slip right out. And there's just no trouble at all. So I can't kind of pin things down with light forces on the outside, which honestly always bugged me in those older designs. There's some abstraction in place, and that's okay. But here I feel like I'm really kind of dealing with the correct level of detail. But it does make for harder thinking, those old patterns just don't work the same way. After the British failure here, or French failure really, consolidating forces, then the Vichy French slide forward with their reserves. You can see they're poking their noses out thinking about another go, because now there's some Free French that are kind of exposed. There's not a reserve marker over here. The Brits have an extra reserve marker, they just had nothing they could put it on because everything moved, which is terrible actually. They used one here for some armor that they probably aren't going to be able to use. They're not going to launch an attack here. Because the French aren't on the coast, we can't bombard. We didn't have enough movement to forge across the river. And next turn, or on the French player turn, they're going to be able to cover that space on the river. Of course, they won't be as strong, but this is not the turn to attack because I'm facing the entire French force there. Here, however, it was the turn. The Brits got lucky with some of their artillery, actually with their air power, and schwacked, disordering the French there. Reserves came in. French artillery and planes were ineffectual. One of the plane steps actually got killed through flak. And now we're at the point where the battle itself is going to take place. Lead unit, I think, for the English is going to be one of these cav, the lighter one, because they're my only 4s right now. I don't know when these things upgrade. I should look it up, but it's not yet. It's like at the beginning of next month or something. And the French probably want to put the fresh reinforcement, which actually has its full capacity, its full quality in play, up there. We have a surprise possibility. Not much of one. Trying to remember if terrain affects this. It does not. It's just the action rating. It would be hard with the terrain because it could favor either side. That's not going to get us into a surprise situation. I don't think the strengths are going to be that good, but the Brits have the disorder. They want to try to go in. So I'll spend the supply and see what happens. It was an option for each side. It was a good roll for the Brits, actually. They had to take the loss. They want to make sure that the French take a loss, right? They want something to become of a fairly hefty supply expenditure that they made there. So they did so, and the French were put in the position where they had to take the loss too, because a retreat would potentially cut these units off. Now they're sitting on a dump, but it's a dump I'm trying to eat up really quickly, and I'm using it for the combat, etc., because I want to abandon some of this territory. Now there's somewhat of a danger, as I've noted, these little roads that go through the hills, and then of course leg units can walk through this terrain fairly easily. It's just leg units aren't going to be moving very quickly, so we're not going to see a quick cut across the rear grabbing the supplies here. But I do have to worry about the English, at least at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, they're not. If I mobilized it, it's got a 14, so it would actually be able to drive up, cut some of this supply, and cause a whole world of hurt to the units back here. So that's something I got to consider, which neither of my players, because I'm just one person, considered. It's the kind of error I would certainly make, not realizing that, gee, I could have snuck in there. But now I've realized it. It's the French turn, and they're seeing that their position is a little bit less secure than they thought it was. You see, before I was holding this location in this space, and so I was covering this entry. The real thing that's preventing the entry is very hard for me to see. It's these escarpments, but a trail cuts through the escarpment, and that's enough to get me into where I can start playing in creating some really ugly situations. And I may not be able to hold this line any longer unless I detach somebody to sit up here. But, you know, well, here's the thing. A unit fast enough to move, this is what I was trying to say, a unit fast enough to get here will be blocked by someone sitting on the trail, because anything moving through the hills is just going to be eating up moving points doing so. And it is kind of a risky move to run up here. There's enough supplies. You know, I don't know if there's supplies under these. I can kind of look and say, there isn't. But there's also the intrinsic supplies that the units are carrying. So they could conceivably cause me a bit of hurt, and then coming from here. So I'd have to send something fairly significant if I want to hold, if I want to hold this and be a real problem. The threat of moving here is enough, even if I point it out, to probably force the French to pull back, so I don't have to actually launch the attack. For the French, high refit rate over here, they can refit 6 planes, got them everything in place. Pull back here. Here they're not pulling back, they're going into reserve along that line, through a cab over here to block. Hoping that's enough, we'll see. The Brits might be able to put a threat here that forces this to collapse, and that's the way things go if they do. I think Beirut is a victory, an auto victory city, so we really don't want anything to push too far up there. But on the other hand, there's a threat here too. So, but over here, the French, the Vichy French, have made a decision of, hey, Amen's a victory city. Let's go for it. The question is what they're going to do. Now, there's not a lot here for the Commonwealth and Free French to do in terms of, I don't think they have a lot of artillery power. Their plane is tired. which means they're kind of at France's mercy here, but France has to make a choice. They're not terribly rich in supply up here. How's this? Not that I can reach that, but I could have. Actually, I have a truck here that I could move, so I got to think about that. But it was hidden, and I forgot about it. But I may need to strip some of those supplies for this assault. The neat thing is I'm on the rail, so I could ship everything into place. So I actually have more supplies than I kind of claim. But still, you eat so much up when you use artillery. So the thing is, I'm thinking about making airstrikes to try to loosen this up. If that doesn't work, then I use artillery, and then I make my decision which, if, you know, I'm certainly attacking at least one of those hexes, but am I hitting both, and what's going on? There's no reserve back here for the Brits. They were disordered and had to move their other units, so they've got problems there. All right. Well, we'll count our supply and see if we need to move this sucker first. These sheet planes initially were very effective, although I threw like 25 points of bomber strength. You can put up to 4 units in a stack of bombers. Struck there, and I don't have to worry about any kind of air defense. The only is over here, and I ought to consider knocking that sucker out, just for the sake of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It really can't do anything to me. Its radius isn't big enough, but I've got such air superiority, I ought to be knocking out their fighters. Because if they get a forward base, I'm in trouble. Even if I have a hard time building things, though. I'm just not that used to the system. But the Allied artillery, which wasn't very big, got a disorder on that stack. And the French artillery, which was less than I thought I had this one within range, and I do not, was only, for the same cost in supplies, by the way, I think. No, it would have cost me 3 tokens instead of 2. Was unable to disorder this. So now I'm in a position where I have my good armor facing these units, and my disordered crap could fight against his disordered crap. Of course, it costs a lot to attack disordered stuff, but, well, to attack with disordered stuff, really not. It's just, it's not as effective. It costs the same, but that's a big stack of units there. And I'm not sure what I want to do, because I could throw some of these disordered units in against this and get better odds there. So I got to think about it. I can pretty much guess what's in this stack. I'm pretty sure that's another 6 under there. This stack, again, there's probably 2 6s in there, because it's just what it kind of looks like. Right about what's there, I don't have terribly good odds. I have 14 in armored units, which doubles to 28 because of the terrain effects in the open terrain. Both, one's a mech, but up to 30. And if I'm facing 12, I'm looking at 2 to 1. Well, 2 to 1 in the open still isn't terribly good. It's kind of edging against me, and I'd lose a good armored unit, which I have trouble rebuilding stuff. Yeah, it might come in lucky through there, but, you can't really count on your recovery units to be very good. And they're a special rule in this game. So that leaves me with the thought of, well, do I want to divert some forces here, or am I better off just trying to smack those disordered units? And probably I want to attack this hex, simply because using a lot of these makes me eat up more supply. But then again, if I'm risking my armor, with some points for the Allies here, their defense. So I attacked only this hex and used a significant amount, some 7 tokens of supply there. Almost 2 full points. I went over on the 4-to-1 table, and well, the roll looks like a 7. I thought it was an 8. They're both the same, so it doesn't make a difference. It's an attacker option 1, defender lose 1 option 1. So I've got the choice of taking a hit on my armor in order to force the defender to retreat. I would rather take the retreat and just cause 1 loss to the Vichy units. Unfortunately, not everything here attacked. I think there's an option to retreat things that didn't attack, though, along with. That doesn't apply to everything. I think, like, trucks can't do it, for example. But so let me look that up. Otherwise, I might be leaving some units behind. They won't be disorganized anymore. They get to recover from that. I'm pretty excited because I caused casualties to the enemy without taking any myself. That's great. Yeah, except I spent 7 supply tokens to his 2. And these things do kind of recuperate a little bit. But still, overall, I think it was a good result for the French. The problem is, very soon, there's a lot of Allied units. And let's see, these come in at Haifa. Okay, so they're not really a threat to me. The threat to me is if anything came in down at Amen. So I've got this pretty significant force fighting the Allied forces here. Now, of course, if a lot of troops are coming in from Haifa, they may not be able to continue this aggressive stance. But yeah, that's kind of my plan right now, is to try to bludgeon this force so much that it either drives away forces to try to reinforce and protect Amen, or hey, maybe I get there, whatever. No, I don't think that can happen. I think the Brits will be aware enough to shuffle forces down that way. But you never know. This is a long road, and the rail will indeed get me here, but if I can take that connection, then all bets are kind of off on rail movement there, and I'm going to have to rail to here and then try to drive down. So the French have their initiative this turn. They rolled it, and they choose to actually take their double turn. So from this counter, this is to mark whose player turn it is. Kind of forgot to lay that down earlier. It's been a turn or so, because I think I can really do a lot of damage down here. That's my assumption. And if I let the Allies have a turn in between, well, the disordered unit recovers, which isn't that big a deal, although it might be something. But also, we might see a reserve down here, an attempt to fall back or whatever. And we're trying to just destroy as much of that formation as we can and really make that move towards Amen possible. I'm pretty much gambling a lot on this attack. You can see we shifted forward. This is a game that reserves are very important in, but not when you don't have enough troops. And basically, I have enough troops to hit this hex and this hex. By my calculations. So I'm like, okay, I have 1 extra unit which I threw into reserve. The goal for that was to make a run for this truck, see if I can do an overrun or something on it. I don't even know if I have enough movement though. Yeah, because it's my exploitation, it gets full move. So if I clear both these hexes, I can make a run for that truck, which has obviously got supplies under it. Because there's nothing else that could be under it except maybe more truck. Well, it's actually just a wagon. Oh wow, the Brits have wagons! Huh. Well, they didn't have enough of them that I could capture, that they could capture any of my stuff. But I could actually capture that, which is kind of cool. They didn't have any reserve wagons back here. These are all trucks. Okay. That's what I was worried about there. All the supplies move down this way. That's shorting the coastal area, which is actually kind of at risk in my opinion. But it's not clear to the Allies that it is all that much at risk. So we'll see. Because they might try to crunch it. And likewise, over here is kind of shorted as well. And again, you know, if I'm throwing all my effort down this way, you can actually assume that those areas are a little weak. Does it mean that they're weak enough that they can't stand right now? No, it doesn't. What it means is that they're weak enough that they probably can't stand for a couple of turns. And there's a possibility, because I'm giving the Brits the second player, that they could get a double turn and really kind of crunch into these and hurt them pretty bad. But we'll see. However, I sent 25 points of air points after this thing. It looks like a big pile, but there aren't that many stacking points in there. And I rolled one of the very few rolls that comes up with nothing. I've still got another shot. I can throw a lot of ammo in and try to, you know, blast it with, what, 13 points of artillery. But it's definitely a big negative for me. And the Brits get to break up this attack with their own artillery. This is the big question, is, you know, how effective is defensive artillery? So if you don't pre-plot with a reserve marker your defensive artillery, and I feel like if you have artillery in a location, you've already kind of done that. But you know, should the artillery be able to break up the attack the way it is if you haven't assigned it as your reserve? I like the option, but I'm more of a World War I type of person. I'm not really sure how effective defensive artillery was, but I don't know. So anyway, the Brits do have some artillery in there, and during their reaction phase, one of the few things they'll be able to do is that they could move this tank if they wanted to. That was effective, and we knocked out one of the big stacks. Again, I don't know if it's worth launching the attack on this hex, but I've committed so much to it. Can I not? You know? Because the Allies slip away if I don't. I'll have to look at the quality of the units involved, but it's pretty iffy to make that attack. Another question is, do the Brits want to, you know, try to do an attack with just my armor? Ooh. Probably not. It's only 6 points of armor. Would be crossing a stream. And yeah, I'd have the opportunity to drop, well, maybe not. No, I wouldn't have the opportunity to do a naval bombardment before I take effect, so there's no real reason to launch that attack. But I am going to have to, I think on my turn, try to break my way into one of these hexes, which means using the naval bombardment there, probably the artillery to try to knock out the reserve, unless I can do this as an overrun, which I could, conceivably. The one attack we made, we got a very good result. We destroyed the Free French that were there. I should have used internal stocks of ammo, perhaps, but I would have trouble moving the ammo that's here. Actually, I'm beginning to notice that's not a supply unit under there. I don't know what the hell's under that truck. Probably something I had to announce. So trying to get to that may not be terribly valuable. I have an exploitation force here, and this leads me to say, shit, I should have artilleried this, because I could overrun that crap. I don't know what's there, but the stack that's plowing in would have a fair chance, because for one thing, I didn't lose any units. Secondly, I didn't even use my best unit on the attack. I was holding my armor back, but I got a maximum column roll. Unfortunately, though, in the exploitation phase, there is a barrage segment prior to the after the overrun, so I would have a chance to slam into there. These guys can't fight though, because they're not exploit mobile. This guy's a reserve. He could fight, but he's not going to add a lot to the combat. He was actually meant to go run and take that truck, but that's not supplies under there. I kind of cheated, and the Vichy French were confused by it, and they probably have a fair gripe against me at this point. I could try to overrun this thing or this thing. Grab that wagon. And if I do the overrun, I'm still in a position where I can attack. Now, that puts me kind of out of a supply position, but I'm not too worried about that. I have my turn to get my supplies, to get back in supply. My supply check was back here. I've passed that. I'm in combat. You're allowed to kind of outrun your supply with the assumption that next turn you can hook it back up. And I should be able to do that. Not sure what to do. And there was another option here? No. Well, I could launch an attack from here, but I don't want to. And note that the river negates the armor, because if I defend on the river line, the armor is actually penalized rather than taking being doubled for being in clear terrain. So that's kind of sweet. It doesn't do me any good against the infantry though, which is mainly what I'm facing. I was watching for possible errors in my understanding. I realized I was wrong. I could not overrun across the river, I believe. You can't do that if I recall correctly. There may actually be a note on that. There does not appear to be. Okay. Well, I would have to look that up, but I don't think you can overrun across a river. I remember something about bridges not making it possible to overrun across a river. So, but my memory is questionable at times. So I didn't have enough movement points with my infantry to even make it down here and make an overrun. The only hex I could have overrun was this one. I don't feel like I have a good chance of that. So for maximum flexibility, I positioned my reserve here with the unit that has too crappy quality to actually exploit. The other units and that reserve marker's gone. I just want it there so it reminds me that unit can attack. The other units are here. I'm going to try an artillery barrage here. If I disorder that force, I'm going to hit that because that's my key goal to this whole little maneuver. If I don't disorganize that, I'll probably go for this and or this. I have to think about that. The casualties that I'm causing to the Allies seem like a big deal, but remember that puts these kind of nice units back in their pool. So, and they get 2 draws next player turn. So, you know, there could be some decent stuff showing up here to help slow me down. So the couple units that I just killed may not be that big a deal. A lot of interesting things to take into account here. First of all, the Allied forces did not have enough supply. They had enough to supply 1 unit, which I chose to be this one, because this is going to be my lead unit. But they also have anti-tank capability in spades, really. This is enough, but they also have 2 heavy anti-tank capability artillery units, which means no matter what the French have, their tanks are only going to be 1.5 times their strength instead of 2 times their strength hitting the clear here. I'm going to calculate up what the odds are. The French are putting their best unit forward, the English are putting their best unit forward, and there's some chance. I got the disorder result, so I'm going for the big hex. That was my plan. Wish to hell I had these suckers, although I kind of don't have supply for them. I'm down to 2 tokens of supply over here. I've burned a lot on this one action. And now what that means is if I don't get a really big result here, I'm not going to have any gas to keep going. And I'm not going to have gas to keep going no matter what. I do get in general, what, 1.5 seems like is what I'm always getting. Yeah, 1.5 supplies, which I can ship down here, assuming I don't need them in an emergency in one of these sectors after the British turn. The calculations are a little tricky. Remember, the armored units are only times 1.5. I ended up with 30 strength points attacking. In defense, these guys are halved, so I have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 6.5. That actually does round up now to 7. So I get a 4-to-1 attack here. And I'm going to be a +1 because the 4-point quality of the Vichy French is 1 higher than the 4 - 1 quality of the British. No surprise took place. I don't know why the... Oh, it looked like it was going to be a very high roll. So it's an attacker option 1, defender lose 1 option 1. Now, here's the thing. If I take an option here, I'm going to take hits for the retreat because I'll be retreating into a zone of control, and those can't be negated. And if I retreat into this hex, I'll disorder these units, so I probably don't want to do that because that'll hurt their movement. I mean, it's not really that big a deal because I'm probably pulling everything back the same way. I was expecting harsher losses, which is why, well, you know, it really doesn't make a difference. Anyway, the defenders have to lose their 1. That's to begin with. And we'll mark that down. The attackers take an option. Now, if I retreat here, the defenders don't have to take their option. So unfortunately for me, I have to take my nice big armor unit if I want to do anything more to the Brits. And now the Brits have an ugly choice of another unit lost or a why is this? Or a retreat and another unit lost. I don't see a retreat as a bad thing at all, to tell you the truth. So I think I'm going to fall back to here. Or do I want to just disorder that stack? Disordering that stack isn't that painful, so I think I'm going to fall back to there and to the hex with my units. And then I do take another step loss anyway, which I probably want to take something motorized. I'm not sure which I have a lot of anti-tank capability here. And I don't want to lose artillery. Artillery is turning out to be very, very effective. So I'll take this sucker. And let me think. Because that reduces my fuel consumption a little bit. And I think there's something else I have to do. Oh, there's the question of whether I can extend my retreat. I seem to remember something about that. But if I do, I can't take these guys as tag-alongs, so I probably don't want to. The kind of situation where the game is really, really exciting. This is what I'd like to see in one of 2 beginner scenarios. Really just training scenarios. You only play them maybe once each just to get an idea of how the system works, because if this is meant to be an introduction game, this is what you want. One that gives you a few pieces and lets you kind of play with the system in a very small way in a tiny sector of the map. You know, just cut out a little piece of the map, the equivalent to Operation Starlight over from Vietnam up here. Just because the system of this game is so different from of the OCS. It's so different from many other systems in the same the classic systems in the operational games. But also, to tell you the truth, even if you're familiar with games like Desert Fox or something like that, well, they're kind of close to the classics in a lot of ways. Rommel in Tunisia is another one that's got some interesting stuff going on in it. But even if you're familiar with the exploitation movement and all that, there's still some things here that you really want to get used to at a very, very low level. And then one that gives you a little slice of the map and a simple goal, like clearing the road down to here in this section. That would be a really nice little thing that, and give you these pieces or whatever. Something that was historical would be nice, but and if it was published in the game, I think it would be necessary. But the biggest thing is to give the players a couple of things that give them a chance to really kind of play with the system. Now, obviously, if someone's more clever than I am, they would say, hey, let me just throw some pieces on the board and try something like that. But a lot of people are kind of like me, and they just don't take that initiative on their own. And it would be helpful, somebody who's willing to take that kind of initiative probably doesn't need a starter game. But if this is your first game in the series and you're faced with the kind of decisions you are on turn one in this, and I don't care which of the two scenarios you're playing, even if you're playing the shorter scenario, you're faced with some pretty ugly decisions right off the bat. I could see throwing your hands up in despair. I mean, I was pretty close to it, and I've played an OCS game before. So, if they're not in the game itself, I went and looked online. I didn't see any online either. And I checked a couple of places. I didn't check GMT itself, but they don't tend to publish those kind of resources right attached to the game. So that would be something for some of you OCS lovers out there to do. Look for a small situation you could do on this map, or two of them, and try to present something for new players so that they have something other than that really tough first turn decisions, where honestly you really have to understand the system a lot better than I think a newbie would be understanding it. Certainly given that I had struggles with it after having played the system before, it's going to be tough for a completely new player. Now, I think Sicily tries to do this, but honestly, Reluctant Enemies was sold as the newbies game for OCS, and shit, you probably turned off a bunch of people by facing them with too tough a decision as their first play. Okay, maybe they would have never gotten into it, but I was close to the line of breaking, and I really do like this system. I may not be any good at it, but I do really like it. Every time I play it, I feel like I'm doing something that I'm getting a really good picture of what's going on, which I don't feel in most World War II games, especially at the operational level. Usually I kind of feel like, okay, it feels kind of like, Blue and Gray, CW, Napoleon at Waterloo, what the hell, yeah, I got some exploitation movement, but it's just not very exciting, But here I'm seeing the kind of maneuvers that you see on the battle maps that are in your historical, I don't know what they call them, books, I don't know, when you open up the history books and they try to show you what's going on, it looks very much like what's going on here. I think you have the same kind of thing with the Bow and Simmons games, where you've got the units moving, as these kind of formations that look like the formations in the book. But quite honestly, I think most games don't represent the formations on the terrain very well. You have the, oh look, I've got every other hex covered, and then I've got like some reserves to prevent a breakthrough, and that's it, And it may be a decent abstraction, but this gives you a really, really nice picture of the kind of maneuvers that units actually were making. They were clustering together into spearheads to launch attacks. They weren't attacking across the line like some kind of World War I front, or some sector of the line like a World War I front. And it's just nice to have that level of detail coming through And there really isn't that much more to the system. It's just there's so much thought to figuring out how to make things work at all. Anyway. Okay, English Commonwealth reinforcements. They got a couple of replacements coming in from here. They didn't get any, still, they haven't gotten any replacements off their table yet. Decent amount of supply, 2.5. Bunch of new planes, which gives us better fighter cover, but we did have to pull our mixed bombers out. We also had to pull Wilson out. He's being replaced, I guess, by this dude, which is an Australian command that may not be able to command the Vichy French. I know the divisional cannot. The units that are removed I'm putting in the bag because I don't want to rebuild them. You know, I think they're out of play. And now we get to decide what to do. Nothing on the boats because we kept them both available still, which should be useful. We might be able to bust through here somehow. I'm kind of a belts and suspender kind of person. So I have my track here where I'm keeping paper record of what, you know, replacements are possibly due, but I'm also keeping them on the counters. It just helps me to have that duplicity. That's not quite the right term, quite usage for that term, but duplication, let's say, instead. A couple of little things. One is among the reserves, among the reinforcements, there's an extra reserve marker, but the other has to do with the overrun situation on the streams. I think I mentioned this at some earlier point, but then I forgot about it. The limitation is you have to be able to do the overrun in 3 movement points, which means it's impossible for anything except foot units to overrun streams, rivers, for anything other than foot units to overrun across a river because the bridge can't help or whatever. But that does mean that I can actually launch an overrun here. There's no real reason to defend in the clear because armor doesn't get a bonus for doing so, so I'd probably take the river bonus there, which ends up multiplying anything going across it by 1/2. So it's unlikely that it's going to work, but on the other hand, it would get me away from having to deal with the reserve marker there. I can't do a hip shoot. I can't do a naval bombardment before the overrun. So there's some significant problems with trying to advance on this front, but this is where I think the Brits can win the battle. As you can see, we're withdrawing and bringing a lot of forces over to try to stem the tide of the French here, to try to make sure we don't just lose the game through losing Amman. Kind of fortuitous for the French. I'm just outside of range of being able to do an overrun coming down this road because I've moved a headquarters up there so that it can throw some supply for an assault in either of these directions. I moved my big headquarters up there. I think this is an important axis for my advance, and this is within range of these guys, so I can do that, but it's not the range of the headquarters that's the problem, it's the range of these guys, these stupid semi-motorized. I'm told that they are. That's what the single dot. Oh no, that's a fully mobilized. No, it's semi. Yeah, it's got a single wheel. They're on unicycles. Oh boy. Because I've got Cav that would have been able to go in there with high quality. I would have been able to hit with, I don't know what, something like 3-to-1 odds. In iffy terrain, but who knows, you know. I have better quality, so I might get the surprise function, and then that would, you know, put me in a position where I'm kind of really threatening this line. Instead, I'm going to have to do this the ugly way, or else just try to threaten this position and drag things off the line. I'm not sure which to do. So the Allied bombardments didn't disorganize this, but they disordered this. And now I realize something kind of weird about the whole situation, which is that the reaction phase, I'd have to make my choice how to align my forces. I could move everything into here, and that opens this sucker up. But then this thing which has reserve on it, if I fuel it up, it's not fueled yet, I think can get up there. It's tracked 1, 2, 3, 8, assuming it doesn't have a reduction in movement. That's the one thing I'm not sure of. Yeah, exploitation is full movement. So I could slide across the river if this entire force goes into there to reserve. If it doesn't go in, if it stays where it is, well, then I can pop it with some artillery and try to do an attack. I could do that anyway. There'd be a lot of units stacked in here for an attack. Of course, the French do have one thing going for them, which is the ability to clunk in here. So I can't just say, okay, and this is where, if you're allowing that attack an empty hex thing, you've got problems, because I couldn't hold this line at all if I allowed that. But if I'm not allowing that, these guys could go over here. If there wasn't anything in reserve mode, then there's nothing that could cross the river, and during the French turn, they can reposition and take that position back. I don't think I'm going to allow that. It feels... I understand the, hey, why can't I move that extra hex? But on the other hand, it prevents sort of a reinforcing cordon from being available, whatever. I'm not sure which I prefer, to tell you the truth. This is one of those weird situations where it kind of brings up that option and says, oh, this is why I'm not sure that I want to use it. You know, I don't know which makes more sense. Preventing the enemy from crossing the river and being able to launch an attack. Anyway, or being able to launch a mobile defense in this case. Regardless, though, I think the French have to stay here. Their only real hope is to be able to crack the possible attacking forces with an artillery shot. And I should be able, well, I can certainly trace to here. And that's all. I'm not going to be able to get back to this thing. Oh, maybe I would actually. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Yes, I can. So I can go all the way back to Beirut. After paying some pretty extreme supply costs, we're launching this attack over here. It was only a 2-to-1 attack, but boom, we got a big surprise. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to put us on the 7-to-1 table, which is a lot better than we expected. I think we're going to be able to force this river line with a good roll, and we got one. Attacker option 1 and exploit 4. Now, I don't have the fuel to launch this reserve, but I can move my infantry forward. Defender lose 1 option 2. So the defender has to lose 1. And that was this big unit in the front. Ooh, I actually cheated. I didn't take into account the difference, which is fine, but I was taking it into account in the surprise roll, which isn't, but it was favoring the French anyway. So we give them that. And let's see. We had an 8. That would be natural. So I have to take the attacker option, and that would be on the lead unit here, which we can do because that bigger infantry unit is not yet high quality, so I was using a lesser value. And that means I'm going to get an E4. No, that's not going to help me. I don't think I have any 4 quality stuff in here. No, the 4s that are there aren't up to date, so I can just not put that on the board. But it does force the defender to take 2 options. If there's no exploit, see, this is dangerous, but I can look at it and say that's in combat mode and it can only make it to that hex, so that's not too big a problem. So I can take both my spaces as retreats. I'll not disorder that. I don't know if that's a big deal, but I probably want to back it up a little bit. And then the Brits can advance and get across the river line. Do we want to leave something behind? Hey. I don't feel like this French force is going to be capable of threatening me, so I can probably cross safely. I may be wrong, but chances are the French will think the same since they're both me right now. Case of the "oh, they're both me" was here, where the French didn't fire their artillery. Now, there's a reasonable argument for why they didn't, which is they weren't disordered. The Brits didn't fire their artillery, they didn't throw any planes there, but conceivably they could have tried to sneak an attack in there. It probably wouldn't work well, and I don't want to waste supply on just disorganizing units that probably aren't going to attack anyway. So it was likely a wise decision, and one that a clever player would have done anyway. But I may have made the mistake of saying, "Oh, I better attack that. I better bombard this," just to prevent an attack there from happening that would have. So cleanup phase, nothing too exciting, and here's where we are. Big French forces coming down, threatening the Brits, but they've pulled back and they feel a little bit stronger. These are no longer disordered. A whole I guess it's a brigade coming down to make its way and help defend Amen there. A push through succeeding here, some degradation of the French position here, just in case this attack didn't work. And, the French are going to have to pull back from here. Here they have to decide what the hell they're doing, because they can't allow the Brits to push through, but I just don't feel like I have a good defensive position here with just the one hex. This stuff, infantry could sneak around me, and one hex from it is good enough, right? I might be able to even throw supply there. So there's have to think about that real carefully, because that doesn't look very pleasant to supply. That's going to be hills, which with a truck would be 3. The river, that's 8. I'm not going to be able to get that there. Because there's no road in this hex. If there was a road in this hex, if this flipped over, I think I could get it there, which is good enough. But, it is something to keep in mind. But I definitely have to protect this hex. There would be very little problem with getting supply there since it's right next to the road. And, I don't want to get kind of squeezed out, because here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is all it would need to get there, and I can supply that with this, and that would allow me to be as far as this hex, which pretty much looks like it would cut my supply. So I absolutely have to protect this hex with the French, and these guys have to try to fall back, and hopefully they, from their point of view, they won't be cut off, by a pursuit there. And that puts us at the end of June 17th, I guess.